right, gentlemen, as I call your name, I'm going to do a brief introduction. I'd like to have you join me up here. And for the first ones I did, we're going to have you six of you sit up here. And one of you will actually be seated down here at the bottom. And then Pat and Bruce will have you stand up here. I first of all want to introduce Command Sergeant Major Ron Rosser, who received his Medal of Honor as a result of action as an infantryman with the 38th Infantry Regiment, 2nd Infantry Division in the vicinity of Bongeli. Did I pronounce that right? In Korea on 12 January 1952. Command Sergeant Major Ken Stuff, who received his Medal of Honor as a result of action as an infantry squad leader with Company C, 1st Battalion, 35th Infantry Regiment, 25th Division near Duc Pao in Vietnam on 25 April 1967. Colonel Joe Jackson, United States Air Force, received his Medal of Honor as a result of his actions as a C-123 pilot with the 311th Air Commando Squadron at Cam Duc in Vietnam on 12 May 1968. Lieutenant Colonel Hal Fritz received his Medal of Honor as a result of action as an armor platoon leader with A Troop 1st Squadron, 11th Armored Cav in Bien Hoa Province, Republic of Vietnam, 11 January 1969. Colonel Doc Ballard received his Medal of Honor as a result of his action as a Navy Corpsman with Company N, 3rd Battalion, 4th Marine Regiment, 3rd Marine Division in Quang Tri Province. We'll get you, sir. Thank you. 16 May 1900. Forgive the interruption, always a few technical difficulties. And now I'd like to also introduce now Sergeant Gary Beaker, United States Army, who received his Medal of Honor as a result of his action with a Special Forces medic with Company B, 5th Special Forces Group in Con Tum Province, Republic of Vietnam on 1 April 1970. And next, I'd like to introduce Colonel Bruce Crandall, received his Medal of Honor as a result of being a helicopter pilot with Company A, 229th Assault Helicopter Battalion, 1st Cav Division at the Ai Trang Valley in Vietnam, 14 November 1965. And Major General Pat Brady received his Medal of Honor as a result of his action as a medevac pilot with the 54th Medical Detachment, 4th Medical Brigade, 67th Medical Group near Tu Lai in Vietnam, 6 January 1968. Bill Miller and I are going to roam the room, and we changed the format up. You guys will have a chance now to ask questions of these gentlemen, and I'm going to let Major Pat Brady, and Colonel Bruce Crandall to kind of lead this and facilitate it. And if you guys don't answer questions, they're going to ask you guys questions. All right, I'll leave it to you. You got to speak right into it. I think I can.
I will. I'm practicing VW1.
Yeah. I'm going to go first, so this guy can't pull. First of all, I want you to know what kind of a weird group of people you have up here in front of you. So. As you know, our president is from the state of Illinois. And our president is also from Illinois. You think we'd have learned. That's the only state in the union where the governors make the license plates. And then you talk about a fraud. Over here we've got Doc Ballard. He's a combination of a medic and an undertaker. Now think through that for a while. I'm going to start with a war story. Now we hear a lot about this, who's the greatest helicopter pilot that ever lived. And everybody really knows who it is, but we have some pretenders to the throne. So when I was in Vietnam, then Major, Captain, whatever, Underling Crandall came up to me and he says, I want to fly dust-off. I want to fly a dust-off mission. And I said, all right. He says, I know you guys are the best pilots in the world. And he says, I want to go along with you and learn something. So don't make a noise back there. And so Crandall gets in with me and we go out to make a pickup. And so I show him how to make a tactical approach. And we're making a pickup from a bunch of cab guys. Now, as you know, with the cab, there's a lot of confusion down there. We had a lot of problems, and I see these hats all over the place. The cab guys, I was a medic, and they had these big hats, and they wore these spurs. And so we had a problem with coffins. They were too big for the coffins. We couldn't figure out how to fit them with their hat and their boots and their spurs into the coffins. So we finally sorted it out. For the cab guys, we gave them an enema and buried them in a matchbox. But anyhow, Crandall and I are coming into the area to make a pickup. We make a low-level approach down the riverbed, jumped over the trees, and turned our tail in the fire as you always do. And if you've ever been in a situation like that where everybody is crawling around the ground in front of you and nobody wants to stand up, and you're sitting there, and you guys know that, you pilots, you try to make yourself just as small as you can. And you know what pucker means. And pucker is when the cheeks from the lower part of your body slowly begin to envelop your ears. So we're sitting there puckered, and here's Crandall sitting over in the other seat. He's all shrunk up, but his head's going like this, all over the cockpit. And I thought, well, that's strange, but he's a strange guy. Back at him, his head's going like this, and I couldn't help myself. I just laughed out loud. But he missed his throat. His head's going like this, and he said, laugh, you son of a bitch, but it's harder to hit a moving target. That's a true story, but it wasn't Crandall. All right, let's hear from you.
Hey, it's my turn.
Oh, all right. All right, here we go.
First, we're still full of it after all. I want you to notice, he's the epitome of screw up and move up. He flew so many combat missions before there was combat. Pat is one of my favorite people because he thinks I didn't fly medevac. I didn't fly dust off, I flew medevac frequently. And anyone who's ever flown a helicopter knows that that's your first job, is to take care of the troops on the ground. And those bastards never pay you. I have flown a lot of guys out of combat zones that were wounded, including Joe Marm, who's one of our medal recipients, and he has 6,000 pigs. All I asked for was 2. Just 2 for taking him back out. I'm down to 1. But Joe was one of those guys that received the medal on the 14th of November, '65. And I want to tell you, I'm real proud about that day because that's the first time we really established the helicopter in combat and it would survive. And you guys that flew him later, thank you for carrying on the tradition because we were proud enough to do it, but we needed to keep going, and you guys came in at a later date. Thank you. And if he wants to argue about who's the best helicopter pilot, Ask him how many hours he's got.
How many combat hours?
And whatever I say, you're going to say one more.
No, I'll tell you a story though. You all know who Mike Novosel was, great dust-off pilot. And here's, you know, I think the untold story of Vietnam was not just what a great humanitarian effort that war was, but the incredible things that the helicopter pilots and the grunts did in that war. In World War II, the average grunt in 4 years was in combat about 40 days. Guys like my buddy Jack Delishaw, the guy in Vietnam, was in combat 240 days in 1 year. And Mike Novosel are playing golf one day with this Robin Olds. He's an Air Force ace of some kind, very famous guy, married a new movie star, and we're playing there, and they're bragging about Robin because he's got 100 combat missions. The guy flew 100 combat missions. And Mike and I looked at each other, and between us we had probably 6,000 combat missions. And so the Air Force guys with their silk scarf, they don't fly, they ride. You only really fly a helicopter. So all you fixed-wing weenies out there, I took 20 minutes out one day to learn to fly a fixed wing. It took me I don't know how many months to learn to fly a helicopter. And of course then I became the greatest helicopter pilot there ever lived.
Here we go again.
Let me just say...
His fixed-wing experience was with Orville and Wilbur. 20 minutes was a lot of flight time in those days.
So you got to have some questions, but while you're thinking, you pilots got to think, I know.
Please, somebody else ask a question.
Well, let me just say something about the gals. I see a lot of gals here, and the wives. You know, my daughter was in the invasion of Iraq. I never went through. I almost been almost dead many times, but I never went through anything like when she was in the invasion of Iraq. But my wife, as your wives, I know, used to really get upset with you guys because you were gone all the time. And I'm sure a lot of you remember that. And she'd get upset with me. I come home, and I says, "Get off my case, for God's sakes. Get a hobby." So I come home from a trip, and I said, "Dear, did you get a hobby?" She said, "Yes, I did." "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to raise chickens." And I says, she's a city girl, I'm a country boy. "Show me, you're raising chickens." Sure enough, she had 2 roosters and 1 hen. And I said, "You know what? I think you missed the point, dear." And she said, "No, you missed the point. One of those roosters travels a lot." All right, let's get the rest of these guys in.
All right, gentlemen. I've only got one mic, so I'm going to have to move quickly, but being an Air Canada guy, I can move quickly. So, all right, David, question for the group.
Well, I know the answer, but I know a lot of people here don't know this. What I'd like to know for these people is, you guys go and do this quite often. How many times do you go, where you go, and how do you go, and what do you do when you get there? Just, Dominic, you can talk about this.
Each of us travel different parts of the country, different times. We have a lot of opportunities to meet the great people. We love to get out in communities like this. It's grass-grown roots that's patriotic, and certainly the more we get involved in our character development programs as we travel the country, we really get to meet great people like yourself. So we have various opportunities to travel. I travel probably 20 times a year, so 20 to 30 times depending on the request. Each of us have a different schedule.
All right.
Another question?
Next question. Glenn, stand up, buddy. You're going to stand up.
For all you seasoned gentlemen, The new group of folks that are coming up with the medal, how do you find them filling in their, I guess you call it civic duty like you fellows do, in their travels and their public appearances?
All right, let's give it to, oh, you got a mic?
I think I got it. Can you hear me? Okay. Well, it's really interesting. First, I want to, you have to realize can't hear you. They can't hear me. They can't hear me. All right. Maybe it's better if you can't hear me. But in any case, you know, we throw barbs at one another, but the group that you see here, along with the other recipients, are really love each other as brothers. I would like to comment on Pat's comment about cavalry. He says that because he's extremely jealous, because when he applied to a cavalry unit, he was qualified 4F, emotionally and physically unqualified for the position. That's when we still have horses.
No, really, I really want, I don't want any of you to think that there's some inter-service thing, cab, whatever. I don't want you to think I'm saying anything disparaging about the cab. For you cab guys, disparaging is bad.
No, in any case, when you talk about the new recipients coming on board, it's very important for us as recipients that have been here and been there to help the new recipients feel that they're welcome, first of all, to the society, because you have to understand it's a tremendous change in the life of an individual when he is recommended for, approved for, and presented the Medal of Honor. You're no longer just a member of the squad. You're no longer just a helicopter pilot or a cavalry guy. You're representing, by wearing your ribbon, the men and women that have sacrificed and dedicated their lives, in many cases lost their lives, to protect the freedom of this country. So the job that we have, or the mission that we have as recipients that have been with the organization for a while, is to mentor the new recipients as to what they may expect. And we talk about such things as media ambushes, because oftentimes the press will take advantage of the newness of a recipient and ask him a question that would put him in an embarrassing situation. Do you agree with the president's policy on Afghanistan? Well, you know. Hell no. So it's it's important for us as recipients that have been in the society for a while to help the recipient feel comfortable in the Medal of Honor Society and to help them understand what their role will be and some of the things that will come before them for their decision. But we also try to emphasize family first. They're going to receive a lot, and since we've had very few recipients since Vietnam, except the new ones, they're being pulled 8 directions simultaneously. And they've got to look at how that's going to affect their family. You've got to put the family first. You've got to learn to say no to certain invitations, because otherwise it'll spiral you down into a black hole and you won't be able to recover. So that's part of what we do. And I think Ken Stump wants to add to that. Ken?
The recipients, new recipients that we have, you know, they are just so amazing. You know, you talk with them and you just tell that, you know, what great men, what great women that we have in the military right now. But anyways, now that I got the my phone, my name's Ken Stump. I was in infantryman. I walked to work. I was with the 3rd Brigade, 25th Division, up in 2 Corps. They called us the Bastard Brigade because the headquarters was down in the Cu Chi, Dao Tiang area. That's 1st and 2nd Brigade. We were up in 2 Corps. After I got back from Vietnam, I received word that I was going to be receiving the Medal of Honor. I received the Medal of Honor from President Johnson. After that, I was out of the Army at the time. After that, I went back into the Army, and I went back to Vietnam for another 18 months. I was a squad leader and then platoon sergeant of an air rifle platoon, Delta Troop, 1st 10th Cav. Buffalo Soldier. But I want to tell you a little story about myself. When I was growing up, maybe 59 or so, my daddy bought me a transistor radio, and I used to listen every night to the Milwaukee Braves play baseball. And I can tell you right now, every position who played what, and thank the great Henry Aaron was in right field. But anyways, I played high school baseball, American Legion baseball, and my hometown, and they still have, a semi-pro team. And I went to 2 baseball camp tryouts, you know, just hoping that, God, somebody would see my talents. Anyways, 1965 rolls around, and April of 65, the baseball draft was coming out. And I just knew that there'd be somebody that would want me on their team. So I told my mom, Mom, baseball draft's coming up, open up all my mail, and first week went by, nada. Second week, I came off the 11/7 shift, still living at home, went to bed, about 10 o'clock in the morning, my mom wakes me up. She says, hey, you've been drafted. And I'm going, holy shit, by who? She said, the Army. I said, Mom, the Army don't throw baseballs, they throw hand grenades. That's my story.
I'd like to ask Colonel Fritz if he could give us a quick update on the Medal of Honor Museum that's being built in Charleston, so we can all share all of your stories, including the good draft story. Colonel Fritz.
Well, currently, we've got a committee, a steering committee within the Medal of Honor Society, and we have Bruce Crandall as the vice president and chairman. And we've got Pat Brady on that committee and several other recipients that are looking at that. We've committed initially to Charleston, which is where we currently have our headquarters on the Yorktown. We're looking at trying to move ahead with that project. That was the first solid proposal that we had come in. We went out to the recipients, first of all, to ask them if they wished a land-based museum. They came back and said, yes. We formed our committee. The committee looked at the proposal, and currently we're moving forward with that particular proposal. And hopefully what we want to do is try to have the project on its way before we start losing more of our World War II recipients, because our attrition rate is pretty high in terms of World War II guys. Now we've got several, you heard from Woody, and Woody is pretty active. You know, we all are aging. Our average age is 76, and we're having, you know, thoughts about getting this thing moving. So any support that we can garnish out of the communities for that particular museum, which will be located at Patriots Point, we would appreciate it. But we are moving forward with that particular proposal.
All right, if you have a question, if you would do me a favor so I can come to you, raise your hand. General Helmsley.
Thank you. I join my fellow members in saying that we're all humbled and honored to have you join us today. I have a perhaps a serious question. Understanding that one does not know the level of one's courage until the moment presents itself in a battle in action, what kind of personal qualities were you brought up with as a child, taught as a leader, as a soldier, as an airman, that allowed you, when the moment presented itself, to rise to the levels that you did in service to our country and service? Thank you.
Check to see if this works. Okay, I'll try to I just retired as a middle school counselor after 33 years, so if this doesn't work, I'll use my cafeteria voice. General Brady was talking about how that Bruce used to keep his head moving because it was harder to hit a moving target. Well, I learned that in doing cafeteria duty for 7th graders. It was a lot harder to hit a moving target. And I wish I would have known that in Vietnam. I might not have gotten hit so many times. As I look back, I've had a lot of occasions to look back and to try to assess for myself what was it that enabled me to achieve what I had done. As I look back at my accomplishments, for me, probably one of the greatest accomplishments I'd ever achieved was to be able to wear the Green Beret. And for that, to meet that challenge, probably the greatest quality that, and I'm not sure where that was instilled in my life. I didn't have a father growing up. My parents were divorced when I was 4, and I never saw my father again. I never had a really male role model. But maybe doing that instilled in me an attitude of never give up. And to always really do my best. I tried to be the male for the family. Being able to endure a lot of hardships because you valued something so greatly that you just couldn't quit no matter what. And those things probably contributed a lot to my being able to endure the Special Forces training and to finally be awarded the beret and finish all the medical training that I did. But as I've looked at what happened and the action that resulted in me being awarded the Medal of Honor, the most overriding quality and characteristic that I believe really motivated me during that time was not any kind of an anger or fear, but love. When I was in the battle, what motivated me was my love for those 12 Americans that I served with and those 2,300 mountain yard villagers that I had lived with for over a year and who I had grown to love. And especially the love of one of my personal bodyguard, a 14-year-old mountain yard boy named Dale, who stayed with me in spite of being shot a number of times himself. He would not put me down, but carried me throughout that battle and eventually gave his life for me. So as I look back at what kept me going, what enabled me not to give up was the love that I knew was there and working and making us one with each other. Those of us that were in that mountain yard village and all those mountain yards that were with us, the love and the camaraderie that we felt for each other. There's just camaraderie is a strange thing, but I like to think of it as it's that feeling that gives the result. When you are able to have a relationship with somebody that you feel willing and trusting enough that you can put your life in their hands and say, I trust you with all that I am and all that I ever hope to be. And then to feel that same feeling when you know they do the same thing to you, that they are putting their life, their dreams, their future, all that they are in your hands. That's the camaraderie that's there, and I think that for many of us, for all of us who have been in combat, that's what motivates us to do what we've done. It's taken me a lot of years to try to put that into words, and that's the best that I can do. But I believe it's that love, which in military terms, I guess, we express as camaraderie.
I'd like to carry that on a little bit further. We have a program, it's Service Before Self, and it's aimed at establishing in our country that this goes on in all of us. The opportunity to do something that is unusual is not just a military opportunity. And we have this program where we identify 3 recipients every year on the Medal of Honor Day in Washington, D.C. at the Tomb of the Unknown. But we also have exceptions. We identified the 6 teachers in Connecticut that gave their lives for their students. But we have that kind of heroism in all of us. And none of us believe that we did anything that you wouldn't do if you were in our position and trained with the way we were. One of the things I do with the young recipients is I have them wear good conduct medals under their collar if they have one. Pat doesn't. But the good conduct medal is really shows the difference between the Medal of Honor and some of the other ribbons we wear. That good conduct medal, I didn't say I earned it, but the Medal of Honor happens to you. It's a one-day affair most of the time. But that good conduct medal, if you're married, your wife wouldn't believe it in 100 years. And so our young guys they understand that the Medal of Honor is something they have to wear, and they do it very well. But they also wear that good conduct medal. So if you see one of them, check under his collar. It'll tell you something. But we have heroism in all of our society, not just us.
Joe, have you got a mic down there? And Ron, you got a mic?
I think I have a mic here. Does
Okay,
that
go
come
ahead.
through? Yeah, I've been sitting here very quietly listening to people talk about helicopters and how difficult it is to fly helicopters, and you got to know what a helicopter is.
If you're going to talk out of the side of your mouth, do you want two of these?
Yeah, might as well. I want to be heard.
I turned it off.
You see how tricky these helicopter pilots are? You don't want to give me a chance. Is this working now? Anyway, a helicopter is a machine where the wings are flying faster than the airplane itself. Now, I don't fly airplanes like that. All my airplanes, the wings and the fuselage and the engines and all that, they go at the same speed through the air. They leave at the same time and they land at the same time. But, they tell the story about my evacuation at Camp Duck, but they never seem to finish it up, because the greatest compliment that was ever paid to me was after this rescue was over and we were heading back for Da Nang Air Base. It had gotten dark and we were flying along. We were above the anti-aircraft fire, and one of the guys that I had just picked up came up to the cockpit, and he tapped me on the shoulder. And I turned around and looked at him, and he said, "Man, I want to see you when you stand up." And I said, "Well, why you want to see me when I stand up?" He says, "Because I bet you got balls that big around." That was the greatest compliment that I had ever received. Thank you.
Ron?
Well, first, I like to make a comment about the Good Conduct Medal. I've got 6 of them, and I've never had good conduct. A lot of people join the Army for different reasons. I think mine was the most unique. I come from a large family, and my mother had 15 children, and she was about to have another one. So because you women make so much noise when you have babies, me and my brother got the heck out of there. And when we came back, my sisters were out on the porch, and they were waving their arms at me, and when I got close, one of my sisters said, "Ron, Mama had twins." And I turned to my brother and I said, "There goes my place at the table. I'm joining the Army." And so a week later I was gone. And that was in 1946, and I went to parachute school in early 47 and stayed in the parachute school, airborne most of the time. And I went to, when I went to Korea, I was a Fort Observer and, with the 4.2 mortars. And it was, I was in a lot of combat, but about 30 days probably of combat, and a lot of it went on around me. And, you know, the regular infantry, but, you know, I was Fort Observer. My job was to take care of these troops. And the hardest job I ever had was leaving my damn rifle alone. Because when you pick up your rifle, you become a rifleman instead of a forward observer. And I got involved in a lot of stuff, but mostly what I wasn't supposed to do. And I ended up with the medal itself, not as a forward observer, but as a damn rifleman, beating troops that I wasn't supposed to be leading. So that explains some of my combat and conduct. Thank you very much.
Are we running out of time? You know, Bruce talked about our character development program, and the young people that are coming into the society, and he's the point guy on that, and why in the hell I don't know, but he's the point guy on that, he's the point guy on the museum, and is a very busy guy. But the point he makes about our character development program is something that I hope you will all check it out. cmohedu.org. It's online, it's free, you can show it to your children. This is the best thing we've ever done. When I joined the society, we just went different places and partied. That was it. We had a party, we never left anything behind. I know there were some parties. When you party with guys like Commando Kelly and Pappy Boyington, I mean, you ain't got nothing left to leave behind. So we decided we'd leave something behind, and we go out to the kids and we try to teach them the importance of patriotism, courage, sacrifice. And we do this through different vignettes. Sammy Davis has a great story about his helicopter, his harmonica. Jimmy Taylor was a great athlete, and he talks about his experiences as an athlete. I go about it a little different, and I use vignettes of guys that I've known. And one guy, just one thing about how important patriotism is in this country. If we don't grow patriots, people who will support and defend this country, we're history. I mean, we're in the swill around the drain, if you will. But one of my great heroes and examples of patriotism was a guy named Webster Anderson. He was a Medal of Honor recipient, a great, powerful black sergeant. I think he was an artillery guy. And in the middle of a tropical storm in Vietnam, his outpost was overrun by the enemy, by the communists. In the initial onslaught, they pretty much took off both of his legs, but Webster still fought on. And a later attack, they threw a grenade into his position. He caught the grenade, and when he was throwing it clear of his men, it pretty much took off his arm. I flew in that night and picked up what was left of Webster and his wounded people and took him to the hospital. Amazingly, the physicians were able to save his life, but they couldn't save 2 legs and 1 arm. So he thought I saved his life, the physician saved his life. We became very close. And so we would go to schools and talk to the kids about the kinds of things that are so important to us in our character development program. And we were in a school in Oklahoma one time, and Webster was a proud guy, and he had a prosthesis, not like they have today, but a cane on that prosthesis, and he could move around without those legs and those old-fashioned prostheses that they had. They wouldn't sit and talk to kids. He insisted on standing up, so we'd prop him up. And he was more plastic than he was flesh. And so one kid raised his hand and said, Sergeant, they call him Mr. Sergeant Webster Anderson, knowing what you know now, cost you 2 legs and an arm, would you do what you did over again? And Webster says, young man, he says, I've only got 1 arm left, but my country can have it any time they want. And that great black soldier in front of those kids, I think, set in their mind forever what true patriotism is, and I know they'll never forget the guy, and I won't either. So, are we out of time here? The website is cmohedu.org. And Benny, that's like the one I just told you, by all our guys, all the Medal of Honor guys. Many of them who have passed on now, their story is still there in living color. And for your families and for your children and for your schools, the military people are so important in the communities. Right, everywhere we go, the people the movers and shakers are military people because they know how to get things done. So I hope that you'll take that program with you.
Pat, tell them how many recipients are left.
He wants me to tell you how many recipients are left. We got 78 and another one on the way, but I sure is only going to tell him how old we are.
Well, the reason is that we don't have a lot of time to get this program.
Oh yeah, that's right. The average age, I think, of us is about 77 years old. I know Crandall looks a lot older than that. But,
I am.
and Hal says he's got 3 programs from our character development that he can live. And there are videos online that you can all look at and see these stories about guys like Webster Anderson, Sammy Davis, and some of the guys that are really, really good at this stuff. And Benavides, Roy Benavides, who tells a tremendous story about growing up poor Mexican kid and getting the Medal of Honor later on. So there's some great stuff in there for your young people, and we hope you'll use it.
All right, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, that'll probably end this part of the thing. So we're going to take a quick break, and Major General Pat Brady will be over here to my left as his book, and you'll be able to sign it. We also have a few of the Medal of Honor books that have been signed, and if you'd like to buy one, I understand they are $75 a piece, and they are signed by every one of the individuals that are sitting here before us today. So before we leave, I'd like you all to stand and give a round of applause for these wonderful gentlemen.